Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 85 of the Chronological Read Through the Bible. Today's reading and commentary picks up in Joshua chapter 12, verse 7 through chapter 15, verse 19. Now, this passage starts out really covering the areas which the Hebrews have defeated, the kings throughout the land. And I know you might be thinking when you hear this term kings, and then you think of the size of the nation of Israel, which is relatively small. I mean, you're thinking smaller than the Isle of Britain. If we really are to put it in a little bit more accurate terms, you're thinking about the size of the nation of Wales, which is a part of Britain. So really a small kingdom. And then you're thinking, well, there's all these kings. Sometimes you could think of them as almost more of like chiefs. So how villages have chiefs. I lived in the country of Belize for many years, and in Belize there was a multitude of Mayan Indian villages in the area where I lived, and each village had its chief. And just like in the nation of Israel, the next village over, which might only be 2 or 3 miles away, they necessarily didn't like the neighboring village. That was the case many times that I ran into there. They wouldn't really care for the people of the neighboring village and were more in competition with them. And that's really what we have with these city-states throughout the nation of Israel. Well, the Lord lists all of the kings which have been defeated, but then comes to Joshua in chapter 13, and there's these words which in one sense aren't very comforting words. It starts out by saying in Joshua 13 verse 1, "Now Joshua was old and advanced in years when the Lord said to him, 'You are old and advanced in years, and very much of the land remains to be possessed.'" not necessarily the words you want to hear. Well, you're old and advanced in years. Joshua, though, was an older person at this point. He, had started as a young man in Egypt, was a part of the Exodus. Only he and Caleb are the last remaining of those who would have been adults at the time of the Exodus. And now they've been fighting all this time to take possession of the land. And God tells them that there still remains parts to be taken. The Philistines and the Gershites, primarily, have yet to be defeated. Now, we know the Philistines end up being an ongoing problem. And I know that some have a difficult time with where the Lord is telling the Hebrews to go in and wipe out this enemy. I want to say, here's a way for you to think of this. So many times, the very people who have a difficult time with the Lord going in and wiping out the enemy are the same people who would say about, let's think of the Nazi regime of World War II, they'd say, well, I can't believe that God would let that happen. Well, the Lord ended that situation, right? That's exactly what's happening with these people. These people, the Lord gave ample opportunity for them to turn to Him, for them to come to Him. And He even speaks to Abraham all those years, speaking of the Hebrews being in Egypt for 400 years. He later speaks of that the iniquity of the inhabitants of Canaan had not yet come to fullness, meaning He had given them ample opportunity, but they continued to grow in their sin. And their sin grew and grew, and then the Lord came in and took care of it. And as I say, it's interesting, people would say, well, why won't God do something? Well, He did something. He had the Hebrew people come in and wipe these people out. The gross sins that they were involved in, from human sacrifice, child sacrifice, prostitution, it was just rank, the lifestyle of those who dwelt in Canaan. And again, the Lord reminded the Hebrews over and over again, have nothing to do with the Canaanite false gods or demon gods of the land. And yet they would drift into that. And then the Lord would discipline them. They would come back out of it. They would drift back into it. That's what we're about to see in the book of Judges, is this back and forth of the Hebrew people because they were disobedient. So the next thing is we would think of the Holy Land, or them entering into this promised land, as a place of peace. Yet the peace had not yet come to the Holy Land because the Prince of Peace was not yet in their lives, and because they were disobedient. Even to this day, the Lord is giving you a task to defeat the enemies in your life. The enemies are those things that distract you from God, those things that keep you from serving the Lord with your whole heart. I think of Romans chapter 12, right? Where we are commanded to give Him our whole heart and to worship Him in that way. Let me read to you this verse. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. This is how we worship the Lord. We worship Him in spirit and in truth, and we enjoy His presence and His rest, the rest which He offers. Hebrews chapter 4, I'm only going to read just a couple of verses out of it. It is worth reading through Hebrews 4 at this point in your daily read, because it connects you with the events that are happening in Joshua in regards to the promised land being that place of rest. That place of rest that will come with the Messiah. And it only comes to the believer. It's not coming to the world. It's not coming to the Philistines of this world. It's coming to the believers, to those who follow Him. Verse 8 of Hebrews chapter 4, for if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. So this rest that will come, this rest that will come with spiritual maturity. And spiritual maturity gets rid of the idols of the Canaanites in your life. It destroys those, and it follows the Lord with a pure heart, offering up your bodies as a living sacrifice, meaning it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Him. And it's living in that it's active and can serve Him. Again, as I've said, He wants to be Lord of your life. He wants to be the owner of your life. And He is the good master who gives rest and peace and comfort. Brothers and sisters, I do hope that your day's going well. Until tomorrow, God bless.